Salut, bonjour tout le monde, I'm Gunny, and the things have not exactly gone our way during the past election. We now have another Liberal minority government, which is less about CPC gains and a lot more about redrawn districts, and of course the towel boy completely torpedoing his own party. Now, for those who don't know, you might be wondering, considering it is a minority government, does that mean that the House of Commons is deadlocked? Sadly, no. The Liberal Party, technically for a majority, needed 172 seats. Right now, they're sitting at 169. However, with the remaining 7 of the NDP and the 1 from the Green, considering these 3 are always voting together, they have de facto a majority in the House of Commons, which is 177 MPs on the left right now. Which means, even if the bloc was so inclined to make a coalition with the CPC, which they have no fucking reason to do anymore, means that they cannot even bring the government down even if they wanted to. So you might be thinking that at the beginning, you might be thinking during the election, oh, we're going to have another election in 6 months or less to a year. No, my prediction is that we're going to have the same situation as we just got out of, quote unquote. The NDP is in such a position that they're going to suck the dick of Carney even more, and he will look like a hentai character before long. This time, however, it seems the West, well, beside Vancouver and the socialist morons, have actually learned the lesson about trying to live and let live with a hostile federal government. And when I say hostile, Carney has already decided that already announced I should say, that every single decision that the federal government should be making will put climate change at the heart of every decision, which is a big fat load of bullshit for anybody who is not him, because obviously he is heavily invested through his company in climate change. So, considering that's where I live, what is the situation in Alberta? Well, in case you are not aware or simply don't know about this, there is something in Canada that we call equalization. This is a beautiful, beautiful formula that was created after the Quebec referendum of '95, I believe, which is essentially aimed at taking money from the West and send it straight to Quebec to try to convince them to vote Liberal or remain in Canada, because Quebec going away would be an absolute disaster for the Liberals. And when I say sending money, I'm talking multiple billions of dollars. If I'm not mistaken, Alberta has received pretty much nothing and sent about 600 billion out east just to buy votes in Quebec in the past 10-20 years, something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And that's probably the reason why right now, or I should say right before the election, the support for independence, depending on the moment that you were polling, was between 25 to 36%, give or take. So that's not a small number already. And mind you, this is without any kind of campaigning on the side for independence. No television, really not anything going on. The thing is, the lowest point that I have seen, the 25% for support, was right before the election, and more specifically, where Pierre Poilievre was essentially leading the Liberals 90% to 10. Now, however, that we have the Liberals once again, there has not been any polls just yet, I'm willing to bet that we're already somewhat reaching the 40% of support right now without any effort, really. Now, the other problem that we have in the West is that we essentially don't get much of a say of what is happening on a federal level. To give you an idea, we have a number of provinces completely out east that are between 2 and 3 million people, but they get as many MPs as we do in the House of Commons, even though it was supposed to be reformed to represent population, which obviously would have been very bad for the Liberals, so they never did it. The other issue, and that's something that I mentioned in one of my previous videos, is the Senate. If you were in, say, France, in the US, or in a number of other countries, you elect both the low chamber, I think it's called, or something like that, the House of Commons with your MPs, and you would elect your senators for 7 or something years. The problem in Canada is that not only are senators not elected, they are named for life, and pretty much all of them are were either appointed by Trudeau or by Chrétien. 2 liberals, which means pretty much every single provinces, including Alberta and Saskatchewan, the 2 biggest conservative provinces in the country, we have liberals for senators who are not representing us whatsoever. Beautiful system. Now, considering Alberta is probably pissed this time, what is exactly going on? What is the process if we wanted to, quote-unquote, legally secede? Well, first off, there would need to be a referendum, which is essentially guaranteed to happen at this point, because we already have a system to force the government to create referendums if we want to. Currently, it requires, I believe, a petition of 600,000 signatures, but Daniel Smith, our premier, is already changing that so that it only requires, I think, 180,000, something like that. So it is essentially guaranteed to happen because we already have a petition currently running, and I believe it's either close or already past that, just a few days after the elections. So the referendum will happen. Now, you might be thinking, if you have a referendum, does it mean you just need 51% or over in order to, to trigger a secession? Not quite, because you see, in 1995, Quebec came extremely close to that number, and when I say extremely, I think they were at in the upper 40%, 49 or something. I don't remember on top of my head. Which means the Liberals did a number of things to completely screw over anybody who wants to secede. They decided, or they had voted what is called the Clarify Act. What the Clarify Act says, essentially, is that 50% is, or 51% I should say, is not the actual metric. What you actually need is a clear question, so that part should normally be relatively easy, and you need a clear majority. No percentage has been established, and the Supreme Court has decided to not rule on what that actually means. Could it be 60%, 70%, 80%? Who the fuck knows? The big problem is that the clear majority is to be established by the House of Commons. So, if a province wants to go away, they essentially have to make a referendum, vote on it, and if they get a majority in favor, they still have to ask the guys they try to leave if they actually can. Do you see where the problem is? But that's not all, because once you actually, let's imagine for the sake of argument that the House of Commons would say yes. Well, then you need to have a constitutional amendment, something that would require way more than 50% in both the House of Commons and the Senate to be adopted. So that's already fairly, how can I put this, fairly unlikely. I think it's 2/3, so between 60 and 70% in both chambers, I believe. And then to top it all off, you also need the unanimous consent of all provinces. So, how likely is it that this would happen? Well, let me go through the metrics a little bit. If the West was to separate, for the sake of argument, let's include Alberta, Saskatchewan, and maybe Manitoba, but I'm very skeptical about that one, so let's just consider Alberta and Saskatchewan. It would mean that 95% of the oil and gas resources of Canada would go away, as well as about 75%, if I remember correctly, of all farmlands in Canada. That would be beyond devastating. The other thing is that, how to put this? It is also a major repository of CPC votes. I believe Alberta is voting 93% conservative, not Manitoba. Saskatchewan is voting 95%. That would be an absolute disaster for the CPC party, and it would leave Canada with nothing but liberals. So actually, maybe the liberals would like this. Anyway, it's the other big issue is that this might also be a signal for other provinces to separate. Say, for example, not Manitoba, goddammit, Saskatchewan, who is also very, very pissed at the Liberals for constantly fucking with their uranium and their natural resources. So, considering that Alberta is by very far the biggest golden goose, nobody would allow it to happen. Absolutely nobody. The House of Commons, the CPC would most likely vote against it because they would not stand a chance in any elections ever after that. The Liberals will never vote in favor of that because it's the big giant golden goose. And the Quebec would absolutely never vote again in favor of it either because, well, a lot of their money is actually stolen from Alberta at a rate of, I think, 10 billions of more per year. So what are the options for actual independence, quote-unquote? Well, the first step is obviously to have the referendum, which at this point I think would easily go forward. Then you need to, send the result to the House of Commons, which, as I was saying, is absolutely going to reject it. Step 3, we say, fuck you very much, we are 1776ing that thing, and we go away whether they like it or not. That's pretty much the only option. The step 4, which will absolutely happen, I think, would be the Fed saying, no you don't, we are going to force you to stay, sending either the RCMP to arrest every leader, maybe the Canadian Armed Forces or something like that, or what is left from them, at least. Which means the end result is 51st state. Because, well, the only way for Alberta essentially to not be forced to remain in Canada is to essentially ask Trump to send the troops from Montana in Alberta and take control of everything. That's quite literally the only way Alberta can get away from Canada, which in a sense would actually be pretty good, because if you think about it, Alberta and Saskatchewan as well would probably join at that point. Alberta is a deep, conservative province. So is Saskatchewan. So if we were to get, let's say, 51st and 52nd state for Alberta and Manitoba, it would mean that the Republican government would de facto add 2 major red states. They will add 4 senators four Republican senators in, well, the Senate, which would secure it for a pretty long time. We would not get that many representatives in the House, that is correct. That being said, right now, we have no say in the House of Commons or the Canadian Senate. So from where I'm staying, it's kind of a win-win. I really don't see why you would not want this to happen. Because the other issue that we have at the moment, even if we were to, let's say, create a pipeline in order to send all of our oil to Texas, the problem is that this pipeline still needs to be, I believe, finished. So, if you have made it this far, thank you for listening to my little rant. I hope you have gleaned at least some insight of what is going on in Alberta. Like I was saying, I'm completely expecting that the referendum is going to happen. Whether it is positive or not, that we should see, because there's obviously some connection with the federal government, such as, say, the Canadian pension plan or that sort of thing, that normally should be safe, because whoever had, put money into that should still be getting it, because they're still Canadian. I don't really see where the problem is, but people can be dumb, including myself. But yeah, otherwise, I'm really curious to see what will happen during the actual referendum. I'm definitely going to vote yes, which might be strange coming from a guy who's originally French. But I really, really, really want Alberta to go away, because that's the only thing that will stop me from moving to Switzerland really fast. Salut, bonsoir!